Hello there, everybody, and today for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we are reviewing Nano. So, this is a more, I guess you can say, somewhat of a filler episode of the show. This is where the Turtles go up against a giant, weird-looking junk robot. It starts off with this con man who swindled a father and his son with a toy robot, but instead he finds like a little android that he wants to use to make his big scheme. And apparently it's from some science lab, and apparently broke out after they thought it was a failure. But while that's all going on, the Turtles and Casey Jones are all helping April move all her stuff in her new antique store where she's going to sell artifacts from her family. And this is where Casey and April actually meet for the first time. So that's one thing about this episode. So this episode's alright in my opinion. It's just like I said, it's kind of a filler episode because they have like important episodes, and then after they're finished with the big story, they have just a fun episode. That's kind of what I view this episode as, where they go up against not really the biggest threat, but they go up against some wild villain. And that's basically what goes on. As for the robot itself, it looks creepy. Like, it uses like it finds like this mask thing with like various faces on it. It just looks super freaky. Like something you'd see, I forget, it's like something you would see in a comic book. It's like some obscure villain, if you really think about it. But the Turtles mainly encounter this villain in like the alley after hanging out in April's new apartment, and it like leads to a battle between the characters. But the robot manages to get away after the Turtles hold it off. But it manages to injure Casey after he tried to encounter the robot. But the Turtles find some evidence of it. It's basically a nano technology robot. But the other thing about this episode is April and Casey's relationship again. Like, they end up arguing, which is kind of similar to in the 90s movie where the two would argue randomly at the farmhouse. But it kind of causes April to blush, so it starts to show that she has feelings for Casey because the two are starting to bond. As this episode goes on, she even cares for Casey after he's injured. But the Turtles manage to track down the robot, and they go into the Shell Razor, whatever you want. Sorry if I'm saying the name wrong. The Turtle Wagon up against the robot. But they discover who the creator is, and it all leads to a big fight between them. And I think what they do is like they fight at some junkyard, and they end up trying to destroy the robot by luring it into a garbage crusher thing. But it doesn't work, as it turns even more gigantic. It turns into like this, as this design is shown. But the main thing they use is like Donnie ends up using a giant crane to take it down. And I think it's finally crushed for good. And even the creator ends up crying because his creation is gone. But the Turtles end up going back, and April and Casey still don't get along. At the very end, it's meant to be funny. So, but this episode was definitely just alright in my opinion. I'd probably just give it like a 7 out of 10. Not really one of my favorite episodes, but definitely just a setback from the main story. But after that, these few episodes, the show starts to get better and better, since I think this is probably the best season of the entire show, since it's most faithful to the comic books. I don't know if this villain showed up in the Mirage comics, but the earlier stuff is definitely in this show for the early Mirage Turtle comics. But it's nice to see like a different type of villain than the usual Shredder or Baxter Stockman, since they don't really use the 80s villains cartoons in this show. They kind of just go with the Mirage. So it's a nice change of pace, I guess. But the robot itself, like, it actually is a creative idea, despite him looking creepy. But yeah, overall this episode was fun, like I said, with the Turtles dynamic between April and Casey getting better and better. But I don't know what the next episode is. We'll definitely have to talk about it for sure. So with that being said, thanks for watching, and Turtle Power.